Well, it took us 12 episodes, but we're finally covering a DC Comics title this time.
I don't even know how this happened. I mean, it's not like I hate DC. I quite enjoy them, actually. Heck, at one point I actually had more DC trades than Marvel. Granted, that does include Vertigo.
The only thing I could think of is, at one point, DC got really lazy with their trade publishing. Probably due to its president, Dan DiDio, wanting people to purchase issues over than just waiting for the trade. That, and it probably combined with the random aspect of this program, and, well, maybe you could just put two and two together after that. On to today's subject, Green Arrow Quiver. Now, if you're familiar with a certain network television program, then you probably know the backstory of the Green Arrow. Business magnate Oliver Queen was stranded on a deserted island for 5 years, where he trained himself to become quite an adept archer. Upon returning to his hometown of Star City, he took up crime fighting. Now, in the late 60s, writer Dennis O'Neil and artist Neil Adams gave the character a social conscience. He and the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, teamed up for a storyline that's commonly referred as hard-traveling heroes. The two would travel across the country battling such things as racism, environmentalism, and most noteworthy, drug use. In 1995, Oliver Queen died while trying to disable a bomb that was on a plane headed towards Metropolis. In the aftermath of that, Queen's son, Connor Hawke, took up the mantle of Green Arrow. That is until 2001, when DC Comics tasked noted filmmaker Kevin Smith, of Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy fame, to resurrect the Oliver Queen character. Quiver is the storyline that does this.
We open up with a scene from a 1996 event comic called Final Night, where a being known as the Sun Eater tried to, well, eat the sun. On top of the Daily Planet building, Superman begins to experience the sensation of cold for the first time in his life. Batman, meanwhile, continues to express concerns about having to rely on fallen Green Lantern Hal Jordan to save the Earth. Superman then notices something very small being removed from his body. Batman tells him to pay it no mind. We then go to the grave of Oliver Queen. A man stands in front of it. The man says his goodbye, and as he fades away, a new being appears and collapses in front of the grave. Returning to the present, well, the present of the comic, Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, spies in on a drug deal. Slowly, Roy begins to flash back to the times when he was Speedy, sidekick of the Green Arrow. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Dinah Lance, the Black Canary, is on a stakeout. She too begins flashing back to her relationship with Oliver Queen. How they were the loves of each other's lives, until it all fell apart. Also, in the Ashram Monastery, Connor Hawke continues to long for the father he never really knew. In Star City, a senior citizen laments the decay that has befallen the city. The old man then gets accosted by a group of thugs. Before the group can complete their mugging, however, they get taken out by a rather familiar-looking derelict.
The Green Arrow has often employed a variety of trick arrows to use on criminals. Some include grappling hook arrows, bolo arrows that can wrap around people's legs, incendiary arrows that can explode, and most noteworthy of all, a boxing glove arrow.
A few days later at a high society party, an underage prostitute named Mia Dearden arrives and is taken to the man who paid for her services, City Councilman Freddie Dreyfuss. The session gets interrupted, however, by a commotion outside the bedroom. Before the councilman can call in his security, the Green Arrow makes his way into the room. Green Arrow makes quick work of Dreyfuss and his remaining security. He then gives Mia a card and some advice. This is her only childhood. Don't waste it. Later, Mia sits in a hotel room when Richard, her boyfriend/pimp, arrives. She says that she's through turning tricks, but he tries to force her to anyway. But Mia manages to fight back and eventually severs the tendon in Richard's hand. Mia then leaves the hotel. The Green Arrow makes his way back to a brownstone house in the inner city. Upon arrival, he is greeted by the old man he saved earlier. Ollie refers to the old man as Stanley and describes the fight with Dreyfus. He admits that while Dreyfus is a scumbag, he couldn't possibly be the Star City Slayer, a serial child killer who's been on the loose for a few months now. Meanwhile, the news begins to reporting the incident with Councilman Dreyfus and the possible return of the Green Arrow, much to the surprise and intrigue of a certain caped crusader in Gotham. The next day, Green Arrow pays a visit to Star City Comptroller Harold Leeds, questioning why the city closed down a local youth center. The questioning stops, however, when Ollie notices that the man who was mayor when he left with Hal has died.
Yes, it appears that for some reason Oliver Queen is still stuck in his hard-traveling heroes days.
Later that day, Mia Dearden arrives at the youth center that Oliver reopened with his own money. After Mia recognizes Oliver as the Green Arrow, primarily due to his beard.
I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often in the DC universe. I mean, most obvious, you have Clark Kent, which is just Superman in glasses. Green Lantern's mask doesn't seem to leave much to the imagination, and Wonder Woman doesn't even wear a mask at all.
Oliver offers Mia a job and a place to live with him and Stanley. Afterwards, Ollie takes a trip to Coast City, home of Green Lantern Hal Jordan. While in Coast City, the Arrow stumbles across a drug smuggling operation being run by the Black Manta. And where Black Manta is, Aquaman is sure to follow. Surprised to see Oliver Queen back, Aquaman and Green Arrow make quick work of the Manta, with Aquaman almost killing the Manta, much to Ollie's dismay. After a brief moment of bonding, Aquaman has he and Green Arrow teleported up to the JLA watchtower. Back in Star City, Mia and Stanley bond for a while, and unfortunately the Star City Slayer claims another victim. Up at the JLA watchtower, the Justice League is overjoyed upon seeing Green Arrow, especially Superman, who was with Ollie when he died. Things take a turn for the worse, however, when Oliver questions where Green Lantern is, and Kyle Rayner appears. Convinced that the League has some type of agenda, Green Arrow begins to draw his arrow on the League. Batman then emerges from the darkness and knocks Ollie out. Also in Seattle, Black Canary hears of Ollie's return. In the Batcave, Batman is conducting a test to see how exactly Oliver Queen has returned to life. When Ollie comes to, Batman fills him in on his friend, Hal Jordan.
During the Death and Return of Superman storyline, Hal Jordan's hometown of Coast City was destroyed. When the Guardians of the Universe, the Green Lantern Corps' governing body, forbade Jordan's attempts to resurrect the city, Jordan seemed to go mad and went on a killing spree, taking out almost all the Lanterns and all but one of the Guardians. He then entered the giant Green Lantern power battery and emerged as an entity known as Parallax. This would lead into a storyline called 0 Hour, Crisis in Time, in which Jordan tried to remake the entire universe in his own image. He was only stopped after Green Arrow shot him in the chest.
As Batman and Green Arrow head back to Star City in an attempt to find out more information, Mia decides to give archery a try. Her attempt is interrupted by Black Canary and Arsenal. Batman takes Green Arrow to the remnants of the Queen family estate. Ollie is only reminded how he almost lost the estate and most of his fortune after being falsely accused of embezzlement. The trip down memory lane is interrupted, however, by Etrigan the Demon.
Created by the legendary Jack Kirby in 1972, the demon Etrigan was bonded to an Arthurian knight named Jason Blood. Now immortal, Blood would go on to become one of the foremost experts of the occult in the DC universe. The demon Etrigan is best known for constantly talking in iambic pentameter.
Green Arrow manages to take out Etrigan with a fire-extinguishing arrow, causing the demon to revert back to Jason Blood. Blood explains that he was summoned to Star City to track down and kill a Hollow, a being with no soul. It is then that Ollie is reunited with Roy and Dinah. Back with Mia and Stanley, Mia informs Stanley of Canary and Arsenal's arrival. Stanley seems put off by this, however, though he doesn't really explain why. At Jason Blood's safe house, the group waits outside while Blood conducts a test on Oliver. Blood summons a group of demons who then try to possess Queen, confirming that he is in fact a Hollow. Blood retakes the form of Etrigan and begins trying to kill Arrow. Batman, Canary, and Arsenal fight their way into the room as Etrigan begins spewing fire towards Oliver, and all that appears is a pile of ashes. Oliver Queen is gone. Again. Ollie wakes up in a limbo state, hearing only Hal Jordan's voice. Asking for Jordan to reveal himself, Ollie is stunned to find Jordan as the Spectre.
The Spectre is the spirit of vengeance in the DC universe. For a long time, the spirit had been bonded to a murdered police officer named Jim Corrigan. That is until 1999 comic book storyline titled Day of Judgment, in which Corrigan ascended to heaven, and Hal Jordan, who had previously sacrificed himself during the Final Night crossover event, stepped in to fill his shoes. Now, in an attempt to atone for his sins as Parallax, Jordan tried to turn the Spectre into a spirit of redemption instead of a spirit of vengeance.
At Ollie's behest, Hal takes a more familiar form and begins to explain what happened with Ollie. Back in Final Night, Hal knew that he would sacrifice himself to stop the Sin Eater. In one more attempt to make things right, Jordan decided to resurrect his best friend. Jordan was able to find a few DNA samples of Green Arrow from Superman's costume.
Yeah, that's right. This whole storyline hinged on the fact that Superman cannot do laundry.
From those gathered DNA samples, Hal was able to rebuild Oliver's body. However, at the suggestion of someone, or something, Jordan brought Ollie back only with the memories that would stop at the end of the hard-traveling heroes' days. When Oliver wants to know who advised Jordan to do that, Hal takes Ollie to heaven.
Okay, because since I know I'm going to get ripped if I don't do something like this, here's a roll call of several of the DC superheroes that we see in heaven. We have the Phantom Stranger, Deadman, the Barry Allen Flash, the Jason Todd Robin, the Angel Zariel, and of course the long-revered DC Comics superhero team of Chris Farley and Mahatma Gandhi.
Before taking Ollie to meet his spiritual advisor, Hal dispatches Deadman down to Earth to fill Batman and the others in on the situation.
Now, Deadman was originally a circus trapeze artist named Boston Brand, who, after being murdered, was granted the power to use his soul to possess the bodies of other living beings. This was granted him by a Hindu deity named Ramakrishna.
Back on Earth, the trio of Batman, Black Canary, and Arsenal continue to fight against Etrigan. This is when Etrigan gets possessed by Deadman, and after some shenanigans, Brand informs the trio of Oliver's situation with Hal. Batman is upset about this, as he's never forgiven Hal for his actions as Parallax. Back in heaven, Hal introduces Oliver to the man who aided in his resurrection, Oliver Queen.
Now, for the sake of argument here, I'm going to refer to the resurrected body of Oliver Queen as Green Arrow, and the soul of Oliver Queen that has been residing in heaven as Oliver.
Oliver informs Green Arrow that yes, he did in fact die in that explosion, and sometime later, Parallax approached him about resurrecting him. Oliver was opposed at first, then he was for the idea on one condition. The days he spent traveling with Hal were some of the happiest of his life. Before he killed someone. Before he cheated on Dinah. More than once. And so, the Green Arrow was brought back with only memories of the good days. Green Arrow tries to get more information on the dangers of having no soul when he starts returning to Earth. Oliver wishes him good luck and not to worry. After the Green Arrow leaves, Hal comes to Oliver and tries to talk him into returning to his body. Oliver says no thank you. Back on Earth, Batman is making a return trip for Canary, Arsenal, and Blood, who has retained control of his body, when Blood hears the name of Arrow's friend at the youth center. He bolts up and says they have to return to Star City. Elsewhere, Connor Hawke wakes up from a nightmare. He suits up and leaves his monastery. Green Arrow returns to the youth center and starts to inform Stanley about not having a soul when Stanley knocks him out. When the Arrow comes to, he finds himself and Mia both tied down. Stanley then emerges wearing a dark robe and introduces his monster.
Stanley and His Monster was a DC humor comic that started being published in 1966. The stories revolved around a boy named Stanley Dover who had an imaginary friend in the form of a giant monster. Sort of like a demonic Calvin and Hobbes.
Batman, Black Canary, Arsenal, and Jason Blood arrive at Stanley's youth center. However, Stanley has the door locked in place with a special seal preventing anyone except a blood relative of any of the people inside from entering. Thankfully, this is when Connor arrives. Inside, Stanley begins doing what all good supervillains do, giving the backstory to his plans for world domination. Back in the 1950s, Stanley Dover and his wife joined a satanic cult. While Stanley was more interested in the lore of the cult, his wife was really only in it for the orgies. Later, when his wife became pregnant and suggested leaving the cult, Stanley became enraged since he intended to sacrifice the child in a ceremony that would grant him immortality. Shock of shocks, his wife left him the next day. Through the years, Stanley would try unsuccessfully to achieve immortality by capturing a demon. At one point, he encountered Jason Blood, who tried to dissuade him. He also encountered Dream from Neil Gaiman's Sandman. But just when he had given up, Stanley's long-lost daughter showed up at his doorstep. Years later, after his grandson, also named Stanley, was born, Stanley would try once again to encase a demon. This time he inadvertently bonded the demon to his grandson. After discovering the creature, Stanley, the elder, had it slip through his grasp once again. Realizing that he's far too old to keep hunting the monster, Stanley states that he intends to transfer his soul into Green Arrow, since he doesn't have one, remember, and use JLA technology to hunt the monster on Earth. As Stanley begins the transferring ceremony, Connor arrives. However, Stanley is able to summon an army of demons and proceed with the ceremony. As Stanley's soul begins to seep into Green Arrow's body, Green Arrow begins pleading with Oliver up in heaven. Oliver is so reluctant to return. Finally, Green Arrow points out that Connor has no chance of surviving. This is what causes Oliver to relent and ask Hal to return his soul to Earth. Finally back in one piece, Green Arrow breaks free from his bonds and begins helping Connor. It's not enough, though, as the demons begin overwhelming the two. Just then, the demons vanish. Stanley's monster has arrived. The monster turns his attention to the elder Stanley. He eats him. He then wipes the memory of the recent events from Stanley's grandson and sends him with Mia back to his parents. Left behind, Oliver and Connor begin walking off. When Connor points out that Batman, Canary, and Arsenal are still waiting outside, Ollie says they can wait. Right now, he wants to get to know his son.
And with that, the comic book storyline Quiver comes to an end. Kevin Smith would write another story arc on Green Arrow, but that's another story for another time. As for this one, well, even though I do like the story, it does have some major faults. So I am going to have to probably give this a low B. While I do enjoy Phil Hester's artwork, there's a lot of problems with it too. I mean, his women have a tendency to look alike, and consider the fact we're dealing with some women who are in their late 20s and early 30s, and some women who are teenagers. It just looks kind of strange. That being said, there's also some drawbacks in the storyline as well. If you are not a real DC-ophile, there's some parts of this story that are just kind of going to be lost on you. But it's not horrible. So, if you do get a chance, and you are a fan of Kevin Smith, I would recommend it. Okay, so we've reached another ending of a random trade review, so let's see what we'll be doing next week. Well, next time, not really next week. Well, back to Marvel again.